All right, what's up everyone? I'm Thrall here at Untamed Strength with Brian Alsruhe. We are sitting on the Untamed Strength stairs. Many videos have been recorded here, so we're gonna continue the tradition. We've got some beautiful background noise, so I don't have to add any music on this post-production, but that's it. If you guys aren't following Brian, go check him out. Here he is. Today we're gonna talk about things 3, 4, 5, 6, or however many things we talk about that we would do differently as beginner lifters if we had to do it all over again. I'll let you start it off.
Sure.
You're the guest.
So when we were talking about this, when we were brainstorming this video, we actually talked about a couple things that actually we started out with that maybe weren't perfect, right? Maybe they weren't exactly what we would have ideally chosen. However, much like regrets in your life, you have to look at it and you're like, you know what? I wouldn't actually change it. Was it ideal? Absolutely not. But did I gain some benefit from it? So for me personally, one of the first things is that I had a coach. My first kind of introduction to lifting weights, I had a coach who made me do a squat, a bench, or a power clean first before any other lifts, right? So I was allowed to do as many curls as I wanted, but he said we needed to do those main lifts first, and it was just teaching us priority. Now, he was a football coach, so that's why he did it that way. But that set me up learning kind of a tier system of like, there are certain exercises, they're not all created equal. There are some important ones and they're more important than others. So that was really, really big for me. However, he was not a believer in the deadlift because we're talking like mid 90s, later 90s. And at that time, deadlift was not something that like the general public believed was a good thing for people to do. So I didn't actually do deadlift until I was about 23 years old, and that's when I actually learned. And my max deadlift at that time was about 405, and it stayed that way until I was about 25 years old. And at that time, it moved up to about 455, which I could do for a triple, but I was still training commercial gyms. The internet wasn't really massive at about on that time. So the interesting part was I thought 455 was about as much as people did without steroids. I really believe like that's where people topped out.
Pinnacle
because
of all human achievements.
Because in Gold's Gym, that was as good as it got. So I truly believe that. And then I turned on this weird thing called YouTube. Saw some guys at like 160 pounds deadlifting 500 pounds. Completely exploded my glass ceiling, and literally like 2 months later, I deadlifted 500 pounds. I started squatting 500 pounds. It wasn't because I wasn't strong enough or hadn't put the time in. It's that I truly didn't believe that it was possible because no one around me was doing it. So the second I saw that, it blew my ceiling, and yeah, the rest here is history. I went from there. But what about you, man? What's something that you wish?
I kind of have the same beginner story. I wouldn't have changed anything about the situation I was in when I first started lifting weights, because I think it was perfect. I started lifting weights in preparation for high school football, and I started in a weight room with a bunch of other guys. So I had the team atmosphere, which made it easy to show up. I had to show up. I enjoyed it. I had a bunch of training partners essentially, and my coach was a former Kansas State lineman, so he kind of knew what he was doing in terms of weight training. We did squats, front squats, cleans, bench, push press, and sprints. That's all we did, 4 days a week. I didn't have any concept of overtraining or programming. I just did everything he wrote as best as I could.
Yep. As hard as you could. He said 5, you were like 5.
Yeah, and there wasn't like really percentages or RPE. It was just like, hey, you're doing 4 sets of 8 today. Get in there and work.
Go after it.
And it worked really well, and I got pretty strong doing it, and I loved doing it. So I wouldn't have changed anything. I didn't do any of the fluff BS exercises. So that was all perfect.
Yeah.
I would say that, so we can go back and forth. I would say that once I started more recently, so not a total beginner, but I had lifted throughout high school, and then I stopped lifting for a couple years, and I actually started doing long distance running. And then I joined.
Was that in the military?
No, it was before the military. And then I joined the military, and I got back into lifting. And so this was like my second wave of being a beginner.
Sure.
And I would say that the one thing that I did for a long time, spinning my wheels, was I didn't eat. I just wanted to get bigger and stronger I wanted to gain weight. I was 160 pounds when I got 165 pounds when I got out of boot camp. I wanted to gain weight, and I was working really, really hard in the gym, but not gaining any weight. And I was like, maybe I'm not working hard enough. Yeah. Maybe I need to get more blood in my muscles and do more reps.
I'll add
and
another day,
yeah,
2 a days, 3 a days. Like,
yep.
I was doing the same thing.
Yeah, and I wasn't getting, really, I guess I was adding weight to the bar, but I wasn't getting any bigger. And it wasn't until I realized I gotta start eating. And so I started eating, and it was almost immediate that I started, like, my weight started going up and I started getting bigger. So that, I was like, man, I've been lifting really hard for a long time, but not eating. And I know that not everyone watching this can take that advice and say, you know, you might be really overweight and you want to lose some weight. And I would suggest, you know, lesson learned here is to pay attention to your diet and what you're eating. If you need to gain weight or if you want to gain weight, don't be afraid to eat. Don't be afraid to lose that six-pack. But on the other side of that, if you are overweight and you need to lose some weight, you need to start putting as much focus and dedication that you are in the gym as you are to your diet. You cannot outwork a crappy diet. And that goes both ways, whether you're trying to gain weight or lose weight. So yeah, I guess eating would be the one thing that I wasn't doing that I wish that I would have started earlier. Eat more.
And eating has to be about what's sustainable, right? Like we talk about lifting being sustainable because we just recently did a video over on my channel about me doing a powerlifting meet and the good sides, the bad sides, why it'd be good for me, why it'd be bad, and what is sustainable, what's not. And with diet, that's something that you can't escape, right? Like you're gonna have temptation all the time. And if you are overweight and you do need to lose weight, like it's just about figuring out what is gonna be best for you and then sticking to it. Because so many people try to stick themselves into like a little position, especially with diet, that doesn't fit with their lifestyle or doesn't fit with their personality, and then it doesn't last and they're done. But I ran the same exact problem. Like when I was young, I wanted a six-pack and I was kind of an ectomorph. A six-pack was not the problem, but I would not eat enough food to gain the mass. So I know there's a lot of guys watching this that are in that situation, and guys, if you already have a slight version of six-pack, you can get away with a lot before you don't have that six-pack, and don't be afraid to get a little soft if you're trying to gain muscle.
Yeah. And I think it's kind of ironic that I'm saying you need to eat more because I recently, you know, made videos about my 30-pound weight loss. But I will say that because I was eating so much to gain weight, that I built a pretty good base. And then when I wanted to lose that weight, it was super easy.
Yep.
So I think that I see a lot of guys coming to the gym, you know, men and women, very meticulous about training. You know, I want to make sure I'm doing my technique right. I want to make sure everything's perfect.
Yes.
How many times a week should I squat? I've got my notebook. I'm writing everything down, but they don't pay any attention to their diet. Right?
No.
And so they're really sabotaging progress in the gym.
Right.
So you wish you would have deadlifted sooner. I'll just snowball off of that. I was the same way. My football coach didn't have deadlifts. He never said that they were bad or anything. We just always did cleans. We do clean pulls, even like clean high pulls.
Yep.
But we did a bunch of cleans. That was the only pull from the floor. So we never really deadlifted. And so my deadlift within the big scope of my training was pretty late too.
Sure.
So you weren't deadlifting. I wasn't eating. What would be another bullet point of something you might do differently? Another
massive thing was that when I was younger, of course, I wanted bigger muscles, right? Because it's almost like when everyone kind of gets involved in lifting, most of us in the 13 to 16-year-old range, and a big part of that is girls, right? And you think girls want bigger muscles, so I wanted bigger muscles. And so that was my training focus, right? Excuse me, I was listening to everyone that I could listen to about how to get bigger muscles, and at that time everyone was saying you need to do reps from 8 till 12, maybe even sometimes a little bit higher, but mainly you're looking at 8 to 12 reps is where you're gonna get hypertrophy, right? And I was cool with that, and that's what I was training for all of the time. And believe me, just like Alan said, I was doing everything I was supposed to as hard as I could. I wasn't eating as much food as I should have been, but I was putting in the work and I was putting in the time, and I did not understand why I couldn't grow. However, the issue there was that I literally was not loading my spine. I wasn't putting enough weight on my body to change. If you're trying to build a building and you put little supports underneath of it, it's not gonna hold that much weight. If you're gonna add more weight to the top, you need to add more weight to the supports. It needs to get thicker. And I simply was not putting enough weight on my body. So when I switched from like 8 to 12 reps down to like 5 to 4 to 3s to even 2s, and started really kind of pushing that and started kind of grind, and I started chasing strength. And the second I started chasing strength, this size started showing up on my body. It was amazing. Like when I started doing 3s instead of 12s, I started getting shoulders and my body started broadening and getting thicker. And I couldn't believe it, because everything that I've been reading and everything I've been listening to and everything the experts were telling me was that you need to do 8 to 12 reps to put on any mass. However, here I was doing lower reps, heavier, and I was putting on mass, but I could not gain it at that higher range. So for me personally, I'm not saying this is the story for everybody. And now that I'm a little bit bigger, a little bit stronger, and I have a little bit more of a base, if I were to try to gain mass, I would be going in the 8 to 12 range. However, when I was in that beginner range, trying to figure it all out, trying to figure out how to gain basic mass on my frame, it was about moving weight. It was about pushing heavy stuff. And so for me, I wish that I would have realized that 3 to 4, when my high testosterone years, like from 16 to like 21, if I could have been doing deadlifts and trying to gain mass by doing heavy stuff instead of pretty muscles, I think I would have gained mass a lot easier. So if any of you are in that boat, maybe that's something you want to try.
Yeah, I think that you're forcing your body to adapt to this new stress.
Yes, yes,
and
yes.
I think that something could be said for the heavier weight or the lower reps being a novel stress or a new stress, to where
Yes.
you've adapted to this 8, 12, 14 rep range,
yep.
and now you're doing something much different, heavyweight, and so you're forcing yourself to grow.
Yes.
And it could be said for the other way around, that if there are guys grinding out singles and triples every day and they're not making progress, let's do a block or two of higher rep stuff, and now all of a sudden they're adapting to this new stimulus. So yeah, it's funny that it takes time to realize, hey, sometimes maybe I need to change some things. You know what I mean? So
also, I think if you're able to feel like the mind-muscle connection, like that's a stupid thing to say, but the mind-muscle connection, right? You guys know what I'm talking about. If you can feel that, I feel that higher rep stuff is more beneficial. I feel that if you're in a motor pattern place where like you still need, if your squat is not like spot on, where like you're like, yeah, I'm pretty good at squatting, doing higher rep stuff a lot of times kind of just gets dangerous, because you get ugly and you start just trying to grind things out, right? But like, if you can understand how to flex your lats, like if you tell someone flex your bicep, everyone's got it. If you say flex your pecs, about 50% like can do it, right? You say flex your lats, people do some stupid things, right? So like, if you're like, hey man, do sets of 8 or 12 for the dumbbell row, a lot of times if you don't know how to flex your lats, you're not getting nearly as much out of that as you could if you would be doing lower weights, trying to like 5x5 basic move weight, learn motor pattern. So it really depends where you're at as well, I think.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, what else you got, man?
So did I mention the? No. Okay, so I would say again, I wouldn't really change anything when I very first started lifting, but more recently, after working with Austin Baraki, I realized that I need to do more of the things I want to get better at in order to get better at those things. I was really wanting to improve my barbell numbers, my bench, squat, deadlift, overhead press, those 4 main movements. And I think that I was grabbing from too many hats before then and just doing way too many things.
Yes.
And so it wasn't until he kind of, consolidated my programming and put a lot more emphasis on the things I was trying to get better at, that I actually started getting better at them. So do the things that you want to get better at. And if that is, hey, all I really care about is my bench, squat, deadlift, probably gonna do a lot of that. If you're like, I want to get better at jiu-jitsu, I want to be able to go hiking on the weekends, I want to get stronger, I want to lose some weight, I want to build some muscle, I want to look better, you need to do all those things to get better at them, right?
Yeah.
So it really depends on how specific you want to be.
Absolutely.
And in my personal experience, because that's what this video is both of our experience, I was really just wanting to get those numbers up, but I was doing way too much other stuff. So focusing on it helped.
And your mouth needs to back up your actions, right? Like a lot of people are like, yeah, I want to be a national Olympic weightlifter and run an ultramarathon and be a world level strongman. And you're like, look, man, like it's awesome that you have those aspirations, but like, at least for certain periods of time of your life, you're gonna need to be specific. You know what I mean? So like, don't go telling people that you're gonna be all these things if your training doesn't back that up. Like if you're an ultra marathon runner, you're not gonna be in there deadlifting 600 pounds. Like they're just kind of complicated things. The last things that I have to add are two things that I'm happy that I did when I was younger. One actually bounced off what you just said about focusing on the things that you want to get better at. I am very happy as these go together, but as a young man, in like 1998, the time that I'm talking about is when I graduated high school, and there wasn't a lot of stuff with the internet involved, and pretty much there was like 1 or 2 muscle magazines. So we did not have a lot of information. You pretty much had to rely on the big guy at the gym if you had a gym to go to. So the one source of information that I had that at the time was gold was T-Nation, right? I know it's kind of a different place than it was then, but at the time it had people like Dan John, Charles Poliquin. It had some of the best possible coaches, and all of it was no nonsense stuff. It was about squatting to depth. It wasn't about like super technical stuff. It was very basic, real world advice. It was like, hey man, squat, deadlift, bench, overhead press, these are things that are important to you. Barbell row, these things are important. And I learned all the basis of my knowledge off of that. It wasn't like, hey man, you need to be careful that your psoas muscle is not so tight that you have anterior pelvic tilt. And I'm like, there's nothing wrong with that in that knowledge. But I am gonna say that now I think a lot of guys are afraid to get after it because
paralysis by analysis.
Yes, they're going, if I run 2 miles, am I gonna turn catabolic and I can't get out of this? Do I need to weigh my toothpaste? Does it fit my macros? And I'm like, bro, get in, work hard, do those things. So I'm so happy that my first internet exposure was about that. It was from really good coaches, and it wasn't so watered down. There's some awesome coaches out there right now, but like the cacophony of noise that you guys have to wait through to actually find a good coach like Alan, or hopefully like myself, that can give you some real world advice that isn't like, man, there's another thing that I need to add to my toolbox. It just confuses things more. Like, it was so basic and so understandable that you knew that if you read it there, it was a good source and you went with that. So that was really huge. And one of the things they taught, which goes off something you said, was that you want to focus on things that if you want to get better at it, you need to do it. And one of the things that T-Nation definitely taught me was, if you hate doing it, you probably need to spend some more time doing it, right? So like, I know you were a big proponent of walking lunges when you were young, and walking lunges suck for everybody. And I work with a lot of online people like for programming and stuff, and a regular thing that I get is, I don't want to do lunges. And I'm like, why don't you want to do lunges? And people are like, well, it hurts my knees. And we go through a bunch of things back and forth, but people avoid the things they don't want to do. And if you do a little bit more digging, oftentimes it's because they're not good at it, or it really, really affects one of their weak points, right? Which is why they're not good at it in the first place. So focusing on the things that I was not good at, or the things where I was like, man, doing those things suck. And I just forced myself to do those things because at the time I was reading T-Nation. That was a very influential thing, and they said do the things that you suck at because it's cool to do the things that suck. And doing that changed my training, and even today you guys see I train very, very hard, and I do the things that I suck at, and it has made me very good and very well-rounded. And I think I would not be the same lifter. I'd have much more glaring weak points if I just would have focused on the things that I was good at. Because I was very good at benching, was not good at deadlifting.
Yeah.
Like, where would I be right now if I would have went with that, you know?
Yeah.
So I really think T-Nation was very, very good at the time. Now, it's hit or miss. I think they do some really good stuff. I think they missed the boat on a lot of stuff. But at the time, they taught me to do things that I did not enjoy doing, which was squatting, which was deadlifting, those things. And that influenced me in a really, really good way, that my feelings did not matter, and doing what was important was more important than my feelings on that subject. Do you have anything else?
No, I think that's it.
No, I think that's it too, man.
So it was a handful of things that we would have done differently.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Handful of things that we were happy we did. You guys check out Brian's channel. We got a few more videos we're recording today.
Absolutely.
I'm not sure when they'll be posted, before or after this. Who knows?
Yeah.
But stay tuned. That's it. Thanks for watching, and always remember, tread on time.
Thanks, guys.